I'm Jools Holland, and I've got a brand new record out entitled Jools Holland, Big Band Rhythm and Blues. Me with my friends. The thing that first got this record together was probably the song that we've put on here, which is with JK from Jamiroquai, I'm in the Mood for Love, which I'd always loved.
I'm in the mood for love, simply because you're near me. Funny but when you're near me, I'm in the mood for love.
JK had always loved older songs. His mother was a great singer called Karen Kay, who used to sing with big bands and orchestras in the 60s. And when he was small, she used to take him around and sort of sit on the bed and he'd sing and that. So the first sort of kind of music that he was being exposed to was a lot of big band music, which is why he was agreed to do it. And it's not the sort of thing he normally does at all. But it sort of is, because it's a great song and he does great songs, so it is.
Now we're one, I'm not afraid.
I started playing music with Squeeze and then I had my own group. And then I started doing a television programme called The Tube, which I did for some years. And then more recently, I've been doing a programme called Later, which we've done in England here for about 10 years, where we have all different sorts of music on. Sometimes people will come on and my orchestra will accompany them, but we'd never really put it on record. We'd sort of seen it and it worked really well on a TV show and worked really well, in a gig somewhere, but we'd never sat and actually recorded it. And I think after doing the JK, one with JK, we realised that we should sit down and actually just record with lots of people, because something happened where there was us and an artist, one added up to 22. So yeah, that was the beginning of it, I think. Some of the songs we'd done before, either on one of my TV shows or live with the people. So I could ring up and say, do you want to make a record? And they'd been happy. A lot of the artists had been happy with the way it had gone. Other people, we had ideas of songs, or I wrote songs I wanted to write with them, and it seemed an opportunity to do it. And a few people, I was amazed and really delighted they agreed when I rang. I was particularly amazed and so pleased when George Harrison said he wanted to do one. George sent me a cassette of a demo he'd done of the song that he'd written with his son Danny, of Horse to Water, and I thought it was such an incredible song. So I rang him and I said, well, if you really want to do that, I'd be more delighted and honoured than anything, because it's such a great song. And he was in Switzerland at the time, and he wasn't so well, but I didn't realise at the time, I don't think anybody did, how really unwell he was. But he said, I want to do this, and so we put down a version of it, the chords and everything, just they were made for us. It was like a very comfy coat when we started to play it. And then I went out with Sam Brown, who also sings on the record, who'd also just sung on a remake he'd done of My Sweet Lord. She'd done all the vocals on that for him. And he was sort of weak, but he wasn't so, I really thought he was going to be recovering. And as soon as he started playing music, it started to lift him up and I think make him feel better, because I think it has that sort of power in it. He did the vocal in 1 or 2 takes, and it just sounded great. I couldn't believe it. He heard it finished. He said, "No, that's great," And then, because this record was made quite quickly, then he started to deteriorate. He was really pleased with it, though. I'm pleased to say, And I'm just very sad that he can't be here with me now to promote it. But I'll accept this as an excuse. I think that's the great thing about George's voice. It's like an old friend. It's also true with maybe some of the other people's, like Dr. John. Whenever you hear his voice, it's like everything feels comfortable as soon as you hear that voice on something. It's a bit like, I think, some singers, it doesn't matter what the song is, but if they sing it, you suddenly think, yeah, I really like that song. I think that George is one of those people. I think Dr. John is. I think a lot of the people on this record are, actually.
I got a mind to fold a hand and hold it in the night.
I've always thought the world of Dr. John. I first heard his records when I was about 16. I used to love New Orleans music. In about 1980, I met him because Squeeze were in Los Angeles, and I had a piano rehearsal room, and it was the same room he had, and I found all these weird things in there that I thought I felt familiar in it. I almost felt at home. So I left a note to find out who it was. And he left me this note. And we were passing these surreal notes. And I realised it was him. And I got quite friendly with him. I go and see him. And he was great. He would show me little things on the piano, when we first met. Anyway, one time we agreed to this record. And I said, right, we want to do it would be good to get some boogie on the record. Because that really is something we come out of, And I'd written this riff, which we'd sort of done roughly with the band. But the riff was basically this. Was it. And I said to Mac, as I know him, Dr. John, can we write a boogie? And he said, well, I can't think of anything better. And immediately my heart started beating a little bit faster. And in fact, he didn't have much time. He came on later. He was a guest on later doing his, and we sat in the dressing room and kind of figured it out. And then he came and did the vocal in here and put the organ on. It was marvellous. Maybe a third of the songs on our record I've written or co-written with the people on there. But we've done other people's songs. I think it's very important to make them our own. There's one that we did with Van Morrison, for instance. It's a very old Louis Armstrong song, Backertown Blues. And the opening chords are kind of so weird. It's like... they're all sort of strange, like they're not like blues chords at all, really, but they sort of work. And what's really good, of course, is that he didn't try and sing like Louis Armstrong. It would be pointless because you're never going to sound like it. But what he's done, he's made it entirely his own, and he has sort of reinvented the song. And the lyric is kind of great because it's all about simplicity and truth. Don't you ever mistreat a woman, or it'll come right back on you.
Now I'm lonesome and blue. Oh, but I'm worth a thing or two.
It's very hard to get a good sound on a big band, I think. You want to make it punchy. I don't want to sound like a jazz record, I want to sound like a rock and roll record is really what I want to sound like.
Never mistreat your woman, 'cause it's gonna bounce right back on you.
There's elements of jazz that I love that I'd like to have in there, that, the hotness of Louis Armstrong, that sort of the excitement of all the boogie music and that. And it's all part of the same thing for me, but the sound, I think, is very important. And we've got a few pieces of vintage equipment. And sometimes we use this modern, nice piano, and sometimes we've got a sort of jangly old piano that was a sort of a 1950s one that a lot of blues musicians used to use, and sometimes we'll use that. But the main and most important technical thing, and our secret weapon, has been each of the singers' voices, which is the thing which they carry about them with them wherever they go.
I got a song, it got no melody.
Some people just get stronger and stronger the more they do, and I think there's no question that Paul Weller has become, his voice is amazing. I mean, he always had a great voice, but it's like he's gone from strength to strength, and it's this like nuclear reactor when he sings now, it really is exciting. I thought it was great that he wanted to sing a Billy Preston song, because I've always really loved Billy Preston. I think he's great. Will it go round in circles? Well, I wonder, will it? Funnily enough, I've got a poster just up there of Squeeze and the Jam at the Fulham Greyhound, which was a pub. So we are what you call of the same generation.
Wait a minute now. The girl's thinking.
Marc Knopfler is an incredibly gifted musician and keen boogieist. He was, again, one of the first people to agree to want to do the record. And he's got a great, hillbilly boogie feel. The first thing that got him into music was one of the first things that got me into music. He had an uncle, and so did I. It wasn't the same uncle. And they both played this on the piano. It was the first thing he learned, and me too. And Dr. John, too. For him, it was his aunt, and she called it the Texas Boogie. They had different names for it, but it was the same thing. I think it's interesting, for instance, where you have people like, for instance, George or Van, who are from one generation, and then you've got people like Paul Weller, who grew up with me musically, and then people like Kelly Jones and the Stereophonics, who come from a much younger sort of thing. But the thing is, there's a musical thread that goes throughout it that you can hear. There's a sympathy between all their music. It doesn't really matter if the singers like sort of 80 years old or 18 years old. So long as they've got the thing that kind of delivers the emotion to somebody, then it works. It's the same like if a song is, I suppose the oldest song on this is Back of Town Blues, which is written in the 20s, and that's like some from 80 something years ago. And other songs were written just before the record was made, so it doesn't matter it doesn't matter how old the piece of music is, so long as it sort of gets you there. That's the most important bit, lifts you up. Kelly Jones is singing the voice, and his voice is just great. It's just a really distinctive, I think it's one of the truly new great voices there are. But also, there are hand claps going like this on the bridge of Revolution, and that is the other members of the Stereophonics. So it literally is all of them on it. It's not just Kelly, it's the whole of them. A lot of the artists who are on this record, they don't do lots of takes. It's like catching lightning in a bottle, and I hope that's what we've done with a lot of the tracks. So we'd come in this room and hope to cut maybe 2 or 3 tracks, and most of the time the singers were here at the same time and did it live. A couple of times, time-wise, it didn't work out, so we had to do it afterwards. So I had to take the one to George out to Switzerland, and the same with Sting. We flew to Italy to do it down there. When I rang up and said we were doing this record, he's incredibly busy. I mean, he's like starring in films, writing music, doing stuff all the time. There was no hesitation at all. He said, yeah, certainly. He said, what my real worry is what we're going to do. And then he came up with Seventh Son, which he'd always really liked. And I tracked down the Willie Dixon, who wrote it, version, and we got the exact right words off it. And then we've made it our own, I'm pleased to say. And what's good is over the beginning of the track, when you hear it, you can hear the hand claps quite loud, which are like that. And that was all done in this room, and the sound of the hand claps in the room were good. He was on the phone saying, do this, and we didn't put the track down. And again, it's a first take, and there's something exciting about it. You can't, it's just exciting. You do it a second time, it's not quite the same thing, Like the first kiss, it's got to be exciting, Never the same afterwards.
Everybody's talking about that seventh son, and the whole round world is only one. I'm the one. Yes, I'm the one. I'm the one they call the seventh son.
There's a film I made about music in Memphis and Nashville in like 1990, and David Gilmour was in it, and he said, I'd really like to do that song, Put a Spell on You, and get Misha Paris to sing it with us. And she, again, is a person, one take, and that's it, complete focusing on just what that song is and belief in that song. So I said, why don't we redo it? And he said, yes, I'd like to do that. And his guitar playing is so strong, it just kind of sings over the middle of that section, and it's like a lovely arrangement with all the strings and everything. Eric Clapton really can do all sorts of styles of music, but I think when the emotions really start to fly is when he starts playing in the blues style. It's the way he touches and deals with the guitar. It's very hard because he was on tour, and I was really pleased that he was able to fit it in, because it was quite tight. And he said he wanted to do something like a Ray Charles song. I'd always liked this one, and said, did you want to do that? And so he came here and we did it live in the afternoon. With the other people, when they'd sung, the band would be out here, and the singers would be in a little room to the side, but he didn't want to do that. He said, I want to be in the room with everybody, I don't like being out there. And so we did it all in the room together, and it's got the sound of it, you can hear the room of what's going on. I mean, you could have almost recorded that with one microphone, because we played very quietly when he sang and a bit louder when he played, like a really old style record. And he was marvellous. And when he came, he had a fantastic Ferrari, and I happened to be near the gate, and so I opened the gate for him to come in. And I didn't quite get it open in time, and the gate swung back and just knocked the mirror off the Ferrari there. And I said, I'm really sorry. And he hadn't even done anything yet, and I've knocked the mirror off his new car. I said, I'm really sorry. But, he didn't seem in the slightest bit bothered, He said, let's just get on with it. And I think that really shows what a towering gent that man is.
What would I do without you to see me through?
I'm incredibly honoured to have all of the people on the record, and especially the people like Steve Winwood or Eric Clapton or Van, or people I've been listening to since my childhood, It seemed amazing that I could be then making records with them that I really liked the sound of. Once we started to record, we all became the servant of whatever the song was. And then after it's over, and you're back to thinking, that's amazing, we've just done that. And it's after they go, I think, hang on, is that them? Blow me, that's amazing. They've come here to do that with me, I can't believe it. You have been watching me, Jools Holland.